Good evening and welcome, and thank you for joining us for Filipino American Women in Technology. This virtual conversation is brought to you by the Philippine Consulate General here in San Francisco. We are so blessed that this virtual event is the Consul General's way of celebrating International Women's Day, Women's History Month in the US, and of course, the 75th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the Philippines and the United States. In short, tonight we're celebrating women, in particular Filipino American women achievers in the tech industry, and of course, the Philippine-US relations in the last 75 years. My name is Fatima Yusuf David. I am a proud Filipino Pakistani American born and raised here in San Francisco, and I have been invited to moderate tonight's very important conversation on Filipino American women breaking the proverbial glass ceiling in the highly competitive tech industry. I have been very blessed to work at Salesforce and serve as Global Philanthropy Chair for Asia Pac Force. I was invited by the consulate to serve as moderator in this conversation today, and I'm excited to welcome Fil-Am Women in Technology, a conversation with Filipino American trailblazers in Silicon Valley. Tonight's focus will be to learn more about our Filipino American women trailblazers in Silicon Valley, and of course, their journey, including both challenges and triumphs. It's important to know about their stories to not only help inspire our youth, but to have an honest perspective of women in the industry. We're joined by 5 outstanding Fil-Am women who have made their mark in the Silicon Valley. I'll be introducing them one by one as we go along, but I'm proud to say that these Fil-Am women, Miss Anne Aaron, Miss Catherine BUAN, Miss Alexandra Chu, Miss Erin Pangalinan, and Miss Maria Bonatao, who have broken the glass ceiling in technology sector and are continuing to make positive contributions to the industry and society at large. We'll get to know them better in a few. But first, tonight, we are also joined by gentleman Filipino tech pioneer Mr. Dado Bonatao and Consul General Neil Frank FERRER. And now, I would like for Consul General Neil FERRER for a message. Consul General FERRER assumed his post in San Francisco last January. His portfolio is quite busy as there are over 1 million Filipino Americans in the 10 states under his jurisdiction in the U.S. Pacific Northwest to California, all the way to Alaska. Consul General FERRER assumed his post in San Francisco this year and has a career diplomat, brings with him 25 years of experience in the diplomatic service. His previous foreign service postings include serving as minister and consul general, as well as alternate permanent representative to the International Civil Aviation Organization in Ottawa, and the first secretary and consul and alternate permanent representative to the International Maritime Organization in London. Prior to his assignment here, he served as an assistant secretary for consular affairs at the Department of Foreign Affairs in Manila and the consul general in Vancouver. He has a Master's of Arts in International Boundaries with distinction at the University of Durham in the UK. Friends, ladies, and gentlemen, let's hear it for Consul General Neil Frank FERRER.
Thank you very much, Fatima, and magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. I am honored and privileged to welcome everyone to this evening's event in celebration of International Women's Month. Our theme for this year's celebration is We Make Change for Women, Juana Laban sa Pandemya, Kaya, which serves both as a tribute to women in recognition of the extraordinary roles they play in our lives, and as a call to action for all to make things possible for women to thrive even in times of adversity. This year is also a momentous time in our life as a nation, as we are celebrating the 75th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the Philippines and the United States. In doing so, we celebrate the achievements of Filipino American women who have played and continue to play a significant role in strengthening the relations between our two countries. As mentioned in the introduction, I only recently arrived and assumed my post as Philippine Consul General in San Francisco in January of this year. This is one of the first official activities that our consulate is hosting since my arrival, and it is a rare privilege to have this event in honor and celebration of women. As we are located in the heart of the Silicon Valley, the Philippine Consulate General in San Francisco decided to pay particular tribute to our Filipino-American women leaders in tech. We are proud to have as our speakers this evening transformative leaders in their respective companies and organizations. Ms. Ann Aaron of Netflix, Ms. Catherine BUAN of Asana, Ms. Alexandria Chu of Google, Ms. Erin Pangilinan of Faster, and our moderator, Ms. Fatima David of Salesforce. We are also honored to have as our special guests, Ms. Maria Banatao and Mr. Dado Banatao, who are the stalwarts of the Filipino tech community in Silicon Valley and who are with us to share their perspectives as partners in life and in work on the many challenges and opportunities facing women in the tech community that is the Silicon Valley. I look forward to an engaging and thoughtful discussion. As we celebrate Women's Month, please allow me to note the remarkable achievements our country has attained. Based on the 2020 Global Gender Gap Report of the World Economic Forum, the Philippines ranked 16th globally in terms of narrowing the gender gap. Notably, it is the only Asian country ranked in the top 20. The report further indicates that, in terms of economic participation and opportunity, women outnumber men in senior and leadership roles, as well as in professional and technical professions, making the Philippines one of only 4 countries to achieve this milestone. This is supported by research from the International Labour Organization, which released a report in 2019 indicating that the Philippines ranks 5th globally in terms of achieving parity in management. These indicators should be highlighted and celebrated. Despite the inherent challenges Filipino women face, they are able to make remarkable inroads in practically every facet of Philippine society. Still, we recognize that much needs to be done. It is important to continue working on truly closing the gender gap to ensure that women are able to receive the same opportunities as men. It is thus necessary that we continue to hold these events that celebrate the multifaceted contributions and provide the unique perspectives of our Filipino-American women. We hope to learn about their personal journeys towards attaining their achievements and how they have dealt with their own setbacks and challenges. It is through their stories that we hope to inspire other women and for men how we could create an environment for women to rise and to flourish. I close by taking this opportunity to pay tribute to my female colleagues at the consulate who not only fulfill their work as public servants, they also continue to be mothers, daughters, and sisters to their families. I also pay tribute to my own family, particularly my wife and 4 daughters who have made me a better husband and father. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much, Consul General. Now we have our first guest. And her name is Ann Aaron, who's the Director of Encoding Technologies at Netflix. She leads the team responsible for workflows, services, and research related to media encoding and processing. The work of the team enables the best picture and sound quality while watching Netflix and empowers the Netflix studio. Ann is originally from Manila, Philippines, and holds a BS degree in physics and computer engineering from Ateneo de Manila University and an MS and PhD degree in electrical engineering from Stanford University. Ann was recognized by Forbes as one of America's top 50 women in tech in 2018 and received the Workflow Media Systems Medal from the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers in 2019. In 2021, her team received 2 Technology and Engineering Emmy Awards for their work in video encoding and quality. When she's not running after or feeding her 2 kids, she tries to catch up on Netflix and the latest shows on Netflix as well. Ann's favorites over the past year are The Crown, Kim's Convenience, Alice in Borderland, Midnight Diner Tokyo Series, and Crash Landing on You. And it's a pleasure to have you. So I would love to have an opportunity to ask you more about your career journey and what has brought you here today.
Thank you, Fatima, for that great introduction.
Oh, thank you. I am already hooked on Netflix all throughout pandemic. I know it's bad, but I can't resist it. And all the shows you mentioned have already been watched. Bad, very bad. So I'm making sure that you have job security. So would you mind giving us a little bit of more information as to how your career journey has been and what brings you here today?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I grew up in the Philippines, and I specifically in Manila, in Makati, and I've always been interested in math and science, and that led me to go to Pisay. So for those who are in the Philippines, Philippine Science High School, where you get intensive math and science, and I just really enjoyed it. So I went to Ateneo to do physics and computer engineering. Of course, there were some nudges. Should you be a doctor? Should go into my dad was in a multinational company, but I really liked engineering and building things. So that brought me to where can I study and learn more about this space and also see the world. And so I did end up going to Stanford and just studying as much as I can. So that ended in a PhD. And surprisingly, my PhD actually was focused on video compression. So yeah, people do study that. How can you make video files as small as possible? And which is, as you know, with everyone having Zoom calls and watching a lot of Netflix, that is very relevant today. And, I've just been in that space ever since. So after Stanford, it's in Silicon Valley. So there's that desire to join startups. And so I did join a few startups before that. After the last startup, it was actually bought by Cisco, is Flip Video Camera. I was laid off from the job while I was 8 months pregnant. So it was luckily, I still got to go on my maternity leave. And as soon as I could stand up and interview, my son was 2 months old and went to interview, and that's how I ended up at Netflix. And so my older son is as old as my tenure at Netflix, which is I've been there for almost 10 years.
Wow, that is amazing. And it truly is an inspiring story indeed of how unique your background was and the fact that you took your education to the hilt and you're still learning, I'm assuming. And this is inspiring girls to keep on putting their nose in their books because it will get you to Netflix. I'm just
Yeah, it's interesting. As a kid, I was a nerdy one, and I end up in the entertainment industry, really. So, which is quite interesting.
It's not a bad thing. I was going to be a professional singer on Broadway, and here I am working in tech. So the world works in mysterious ways. I totally agree with that. Well, I do have a little more in-depth question for you. What were some of the struggles, if any, in the tech and business industry that is related to your being female? Like, do you feel that there have been struggles for you having been in such a pivotal position?
Yeah, a good question. And probably yes. And I can't pinpoint a big struggle, but, for a lot of women in tech who've been in this industry, there are a lot of these subtle biases or microaggressions that you experience. And looking back, actually, I went to an all-girls elementary school in the Philippines, and I went to Pisay, which was boys and girls. And one of the most distinct memories I have is like first week of class, we wanted to, you had the student council and who's going to run for president. And I distinctly remember that was my first encounter of having classmates who were boys. One of the boys said, "Hindi pwedeng babae for the president." For those who can't be a girl for the president. And me coming from an all-girls school and have another friend like, what is he talking about? Like, of course we can be president of the student council. So she ran for president and I ran for vice president and we won. And so that was like the first rude awakening to what we would experience later on in life. And I've had a few of those, and maybe I can't directly pinpoint that it was it was because I was a woman. But in retrospect, like one of the startups I was at, one of the executives told me that, you can't be successful in the startup. You have too much of a balanced life. You have your boyfriend, you have your family. And another friend of mine heard me say that. I told her that, and she's like, do you think he would have said it to your peers who were men? Right. And I was like, yeah, probably not. I've failed technical interviews a lot. Just to all the girls out there, like, yeah, you can keep failing, but just keep doing it. And I failed technical interviews, and even in spite of the fact I did my master's, and in some way they were pushing me to something a bit less technical for those companies. And these are tech companies. And and that was, I don't know if that was in relation to also being a woman, or maybe looking at my strengths as a woman and not necessarily, looking at my tech background. And so they were very subtle, but I'm sure it was there. And maybe being almost like blissfully ignorant probably about some of these microaggressions helped me go through it. I think another thing that always, like, sometimes I'm aware of and sometimes just try to ignore is if we're meeting with let's say someone from a new company that doesn't know about our team, and I'm introduced as the leader of the team, I still see some surprise in people's eyes, right? And, these things can just bog down on you, and you just have to ignore them.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I feel microaggressions is totally pivoted towards women, especially women of color. And it's quite disheartening to know that that still happens even in 2021. They always look at a woman when they walk in that they're the assistant or the coordinator. They never look to say, that's the boss. Listen to her. And I feel that is something that dramatically needs to change. So I'm so glad that you even smile through it and are able to still, like, sometimes ignorance is bliss, but I'm glad that you acknowledged it and you're able to take it as like, whatever, sweat it off your back and be able to make an amazing success. And honestly, I'm seriously blown away by your intelligence and by how the joy that you have in what you do. So thank you for giving us that opportunity to hear your story. And this is to all the young Pinoys and Pinays out there. Nothing is impossible if you just keep following what you want to do in life. So let's continue on with this journey. And thank you so much, Anne. We'll be bringing you back again for more conversation with the rest of the panels. But I am so excited to introduce our next guest as well. She is also a Stanford alum and is an award-winning investor relations executive from several blue-chip Silicon Valley firms, including Lyft, Okta, AppDynamics, Cisco, DocuSign, SAP, Business Objects, Ariba, Oracle, and Robertson Stevens. What a list. Oh my gosh. Miss Catherine BUAN has over 20 years of experience in managing equity strategy for leaders in high growth technology industries. She is also the president of FilDev for 3 years, and we'll talk more about FilDev later through Miss Maria Banatao and Mr. Dado Banatao, the founders of FilDev. Catherine helmed the organization when it was launching its cornerstone programs, providing science and engineering scholarships, primary research institutes, and various entrepreneurship programs in partnership with organizations such as the U.S. State Department, USAID, and she currently remains as on the board of directors. Ms. BUAN has also been on the board of directors of the American Red Cross Silicon Valley, the Asian Pacific Fund, Beyond the Book, and St. Bartholomew Catholic Church. Catherine, please, it is such a pleasure to meet you here. And oh my gosh, what a plethora of accomplishments. We are so excited to hear a little bit about your work, and how would you describe it in layman terms to our young Filipino and Filipino Americans?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Fatima, for the warm introduction. I was kind of excited, like, who are you talking about? It's such a pleasure to be here and to be on this panel with such esteemed women. Just so excited, and so excited that that our community is doing something in particular to celebrate women and Philippines right now. what do I do? So in layman's terms, it's super simple. If you are CEO of a company and you're deciding to go public or you're raising money, I help you raise your valuation. So if you're public, I'm there it's financial marketing, help your stock price go up, help you to get the best valuation for your company. And I've done that probably more than anybody else in my space. Probably. We've done like 7 or 8 IPOs, 2 turnarounds, and dozens of M&A situations where people are trying to manage the valuation. So it's fun, and it's definitely not a traditional Filipino career.
I love that, because I think that's what's so amazing, because I think our youth neglects to realize that there's so many different paths and avenues that you can embark on, but it's hard when you've only been guided into one direction. So it's amazing that you get to utilize your social skills, your love for money. Everyone loves money, right? But and be able to pivot it in such a way for creative companies. Like if we were to talk about this 20 years ago, do you like Lyft? And they were like, what the heck is Lyft? And now it's like, I can't live without Lyft, So it's an amazing pivot, and it's obviously you did an amazing job because you got them with the high IPOs and M&As. So my question I have for you, and if you don't mind me pivoting the conversation, how do you perceive yourself as a Filipina woman, and how do you think people perceive you, and how do you deal with these sorts of challenges?
That's an interesting question, actually. For many people who may relate to this, because, today there's not a room that I don't walk into with, so much experience in what I do. And I have a wide network of people who I've worked with who also have confidence in me. So how I feel about myself today is wildly different than the way I felt about myself growing up. And I don't really think about it too often. So it's interesting to reflect. When I was growing up, I grew up in a very, very, very poor immigrant family. We were from Dumangas. And, being that poor and coming over as an immigrant, my mother always says she came over with one wool coat and $100 and lots of hope, right? We really had nothing. My mother came over for a job. My dad came over to further his education as an engineer. So my self-image growing up, there were very few Filipinos back in the early 60s, late 60s. To tell you the truth, my self-image was pretty stunted for most of my life because we were the only brown family wherever we were. No one knew, were we Chinese? Were we Hawaiian? Really, even understanding what Filipino meant was not something people really knew back then. And of course, now we have more Filipinos. But in a way, I think any confidence that I may have gained along the way came really, really slowly. And it feels like it was just earned day by day along a really long path. And it was hard work and just getting the best education that I could get. And really, in a way, for many reasons, this can be one of the best ways to become and grow more confident. Because when you earn that confidence, because you educate yourself, you learn things by doing things and just keep moving forward, your confidence is not built on a fragile base anymore. It's very authentic, very sincere, and it's impenetrable. And so I do watch, counterparts, I'll just say like a white male across the table. And when I was 25, and I'm like, I don't think that guy really knows what he's talking about, but I know what I'm talking about because I did the work. So along that long journey of feeling like I've just, earned my way through just really working hard, studying, learning, putting it to work, and building and bringing value. Today, I don't really think of my skin color or my gender. In fact, it's so interesting because I think I forget. So when we celebrated the Lyft IPO a couple of years ago, about a year and a half ago, they took a photo on the trading floor, right? And we had the leadership of, JP Morgan, Credit Suisse, the Lyft management team. And across this photo, it was only when I saw the photo that I realized, for all the months of work that we have been doing, that I was the only person in this leadership group out of 14 who was of color and who was a woman. It was just crazy. So how do I handle it? I think over time, you start to realize, well, you can't really control how you feel, because there's definitely just so many times when someone either brings you down to your face or looks past you in a meeting or ignores what you say, or even worse, you say something and then somebody else just says the same thing as if you didn't just say it. So these things happen over and over again. But yes, it feels really crappy, but you can't control how you're going to feel, but you can control and decide on how you're going to react. And so I always remind myself that whatever preconceptions, and it still happens today when we walk into a room and someone just looks right past me and I'm the boss and they look to the person that works for me as if they're running the place, I just remind myself the preconceptions usually matter for about 5 seconds. And the minute you start to talk and engage in the meeting, they know what you know, they learn what value you bring, and it's not a problem anymore. The other thing, and I remember this, especially earlier in my career, is, you know what? Let them underrate you. Let them underrate you, let them look past you, and then reflect back 30 minutes later and say, all right, she just blew me away. So that's great too. And then I also think, now I kind of think after you get a chance to sort of, blow everyone away and let them underrate you and then just surprise them to the upside, is when you're the only brown person in the room and the only woman, they will definitely never forget you. So that's how I've always handled it. I don't know if that really answers your question, but that's my story.
That absolutely did. And you know what? I have to say this before we continue on. All of the amazing women on this panel are unforgettable. And I can't imagine someone looking past you all and saying, who's the boss? Because you project confidence, you have amazing demeanors, and don't make me cry, because I feel like you're inspiring our kids to continue pursuing what they want in life. So thank you for your words on that. Sorry, I can't help it. I love crying. With that being said, let's continue. And thank you so much, Catherine, for those wonderful words of your story and the fact that you have positive affirmations to make anybody want to just command a room like that. So let's go on with our wonderful panel. Our next guest is Miss Alexandria Chu. Alexandria Chu, also known as Alex, is a program manager for Google Maps. Prior to relocating to the Bay from her native New York City, Alex worked in financial services, focusing on investment banking compliance. As an alumnus of the leadership development organization Prep for Prep, she had firsthand experience on the impact of access to opportunity and information. This drove her to establish free after-school computer science programs across the Bay Area and become the Filipino Googler Network's global COO, and fly across the US with Google's CS First and grow with Google programs to teach coding to students and adults. When Alex is not working or volunteering, she enjoys spending time with her family and friends. Alex, we are so blessed to have you here today. Would you mind telling us more about your work and your involvement with the Filipino Googler Network?
Yeah, so I have been a part of the Filipino Googler Network since I joined Google going on 6 years ago now. And I'm currently their Chief Operations Officer. And in terms of what the Filipino Googler Network is, it's an employee resource group that we have internally at Google, where we really try to exude kapamilya. So this feeling of family amongst our Filipino demographic, as well as our as the allies. So interestingly enough, we have, from a full-time employee perspective, we don't have a very large population, but as I'm sure others here know, we have a large outsourcing population. There's a lot of vendor services. Like the Philippines, I believe, a couple of years ago surpassed India in terms of number of customer service companies, like per capita. So it's a space where what we try to do is have a sense of belonging, deal with anything and everything Filipino related. Usually it's karaoke and food, very honestly. But we also talk about very important things such as women's issues, addressing colorism within the Filipino community, things of that nature.
speaking as an ERG chair for Salesforce, I am in awe of the position you have, because to be able to balance your 9 to 5 and also being involved in creating equality and diversity within the organization is phenomenal, because I'm already tired with working my 9 to 5. So I really admire that you've been able to do that and share the connectivity between everybody and have that Amelia, that Bayanihan culture within Google. We're following your lead. So I would love to ask you, what do you think are some of the factors that paved the way for your success in the tech industry or in your advocacy?
Yeah. So I think in terms of factors, obviously there's a multitude. I can't name them all, but there's really 3 that stand out for me that I like to share with individuals. The first is the fact that I was witness to watching my parents grind when they came here. So my parents immigrated here from Binangonan, Rizal. I was born here in the States, but we did not have money. We grew up I wouldn't say like super poor, but not well off either. At certain points in my, I think it was a 4-bedroom home with 1.5 baths. We had as many as like 12 people living there at once. So, we didn't come from money at all. But what I learned from my parents and what I witnessed from my parents was their unwavering dedication to do whatever was necessary to get to their goal, which was provide a better future for their daughters. And my dad worked 2 jobs 7 days a week when I was growing up. My mom, bless her, she dealt with all 4 daughters and worked and cooked and cleaned and everything. So I'd say that's probably the first factor that really stands out for me. The second that really contributed to my success in tech, particularly at Google, I think is something I mentioned about my FGN involvement, which is the cultural aspect of Bayanihan. So what's super interesting is that the fact that I'm always willing to bring everybody to the table to solve a problem, the fact that I'm like, hey, you need help. I'm not going to look for you to do something back to help me. I'm going to help you because we're on the same team. That factor, it leaves a lot of individuals with a really good feeling of working with me, right? Because they know I'm not just there to move up the corporate ladder. Like I'm all about we, not me, right? And so I would say the second factor that really contributes to my success in tech has been this Bayanihan cultural kind of influence for me. The third, and it wouldn't be Women's History Month if I didn't call it out, third factor is definitely my mom, the multitasking queen. So when I mentioned earlier the grind, that's a complete understatement when it comes to my mom. She had 4 rambunctious young women who were very opinionated, never afraid to physically get into altercations with each other. And here was this tiny woman. She's all of 5 feet tall. I'm not much taller. I'm 5'2", but she would have to get between these daughters that were all bigger than her, getting us to stop and enjoy and like each other, all while at the same time making sure there was food on the table, making sure that the house was clean, making sure that we got all of our homework done. So the third factor that, again, I want to kind of highlight for me in terms of why I'm successful in tech is watching my mother be able to multitask, right? Keep her eye on the prize while at the same time keeping her children alive and her house in order. That kind of mix of things really is what I attribute my success in tech to be.
Thank you so much, Alex. I think what really clicked was we learned that and this is what I've noticed from all the dialogues from the rest of the panelists too, is that our parents were hustlers. They taught us to be hustlers. They were tough because they came from the Philippines with practically nothing in their pockets. And they made the dream here in the US. And they said, I'm not going to rest until my children have that American dream. So I love that we attribute our families as the reason as our rock to be able to do the things that we do and able to fly. And I think not many people realize that outside of our API community, that the familial connection is what drives our success, because it's from your history. You know your worth. You're able to strive in the present to make a better future. And that's why we continue to do the things that we do, because we know we're doing in recognition and gratitude of our families. I hope you all agree with that, right? Yay! So with that, thank you so much, Alex. And so let's continue on with this amazing conversation. I'm honestly blown away, and I am turning into a crier. The waterworks are going here, but it's okay, because when you cry as women, we hold it all in because we work so hard. So when we own our emotions and we own the strength that we have, it makes it even a better conversation. So let's continue on. We have our next guest, Miss Erin Pangalinan. Erin is a software engineer, computational designer hybrid, author, educator, startup advisor, entrepreneur, investor, proud UC Berkeley alumnus, serving on the first steering committee for the UC Berkeley Asian American Pacific Islander Alumni Association. She works at the intersections of augmented, virtual, and extended reality, artificial intelligence or AI, data science, high performance computing, biotech, blockchain, cryptocurrency, games, and esports. She still has time to do esports. I don't even know. That's amazing. She is also lead author and co-editor of O'Reilly Media Books, Creating Augmented and Virtual Realities, Theory and Practice for Next Generation Spatial Computing, circulating over 24 countries, and it has been translated in not only English, but Chinese and Korean. Erin was selected as a diversity fellow in Oculus Launchpad in 2018 and University of San Francisco's Deep Learning program from 2017 to 2018. She also was part of Data Ethics inaugural program and the ALI Diverse Entrepreneur Program housed at Verizon Ventures in 2019. She is also the founder of FASTER, which is translated as Philippine X Americans in STEAM, Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math, and serves as a national board president. Early in her career, she worked as an official electoral campaign staff for Obama for America and ROCON, and for U.S. Deputy Secretary of Commerce for Congress in 2014. Wow, Erin, absolutely amazing. I've spoken with you before, and we've actually connected on so many different levels in other Filipino American organizations. And honestly, I don't know how you do it. You're like a Energizer bunny. You just keep going and going. But it's amazing the impact that you have laid on our community and laying groundwork to be able to influence our youth. So I would love to learn more about FASTER and what drove you to create this organization.
Maraming salamat. I just wanted to say hello to Conjen and Deputy Conjen, so Vanessa and Neil. And to, of course, Daro and Maria Banatao, who I look up to so much as, I always say Tito and Titas from another family. Fatima, just to see you grow, I'm so glad you're at Salesforce, and to be a part of the Filipino Ohana family at Asia Pac Force at Salesforce. And there's just so many great people here. I was just on calls earlier this weekend with Alexandria Bautista Chiu at Google, and Erin at Kababayans at Netflix. I had calls with some of your Kababayans at Netflix and HBO this weekend for FASTER. And I'm a pleasure to just meet Catherine BUAN from Asana. So I am so sorry I'm so Filipino late to the party today, but everyone's calling me left and right about anti-Asian violence in Atlanta, and we're trying to coordinate as a part of FASTER with a larger coalition, called Asian Leaders Alliance. Actually, the chair I just met with founded Salesforce Asia Pac Force, Jimmy Hua. So they're a coalition
Very
of
cool.
100 corporate tech ERGs. And so we're trying to coordinate between a lot of noise that's happening in Atlanta. And I'm also going to be on calls with a Silicon Valley Leadership Group, the newly named Vice President of Racial Justice that Alex knows very well, who sits on our board of Lead Filipino, Angelica Cortez, which is representing over 450 tech employee resource groups, tech companies. And I'm trying to identify all of the Filipino ones because I have like over 20 publicly traded companies that are
That's a lot.
Filipino ones. It's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And when I looked at their list, the Asian ones, I said, we are actually much bigger than what they have. And
Which
I credit so much
okay.
of that to folks like Tito Daro and Tita Maria for all of their amazing work. If I had to say one word of what, brought me to found Faster, if like you were born to do this, it's like I will trace back to everyone whose shoulders that I stand on. And that goes back to my great-great-grandparents who were katupineros. My lola, or ang kapampangan, so we say apu, my apu Suring was probably the first Pinay entrepreneur in my family who had like a fish market kiosk type of thing in the barrios in the Philippines. And my mom said she cared so much about community, she gave too much fish away. So they were kind of poor in the barrio, but because they were so hardworking, like my lolo, my mom, I had no idea, because I think Anne Aaron had said you went to Philippine Science High School. I had no idea until recently. My mom, who influenced me so much, and I'll mention why and how this inspires Faster, placed third, I guess, for the entrance exams for schools. But her dad said, this is at the time, you got to think this is like I forget like what decade it was, but it was a long time ago where they didn't think women could go to school except to be teachers or maybe nurses. My mom was the first Filipino American licensed veterinarian in Northern California. So she was the president of the Northern California Association of Filipino Veterinarians. Everyone is in biotech, so the Genentechs of the world. My dad is working on the vaccine right now. They were partnered with AstraZeneca, it's FibroGen, and at Roche. And so growing up, I was always told there were values in the house of your major is going to be computer science, like your brother, and also computational biology, because you're going to be in biotech. And I thought, I don't want to be in a lab for 10 years, but science was what, put food on the table, and education is what got them out of poverty in the Philippines. So that's when we look up to people like Dado, who I just think, oh, it's another Tito, because my Tito went to Mapua too. He just didn't, was an entrepreneur. And for people like Dado who have built so much of like the educational infrastructure, venture capital, everything in the Philippines. My parents told me when I was 18, when I helped incorporate their nonprofit, they were sending books to the Philippines for vet med or veterinary medicine school. And what they had told me, because my mom was very proud UP graduate, UP Diliman. My dad was from Los Baños. So for all the Filipino Americans that are going to be watching later, like, what's that? It's like UC Berkeley, UC Davis, right? So those are the two kind of schools, and they like Ateneo and Stanford too, right? So they were saying to me, you got to write about the Philippine Pathology Center. You need to write about this. I thought it was the most boring thing on the planet. I said, Mom, I'm writing about hip hop and DJ Qbert, and I like music, and I thought I was going to be an A&R or be an engineer at Cisco. It was going to be one of two paths. And they had said, no, you must write this because we need to make sure our scientists are doing good research and development, R&D in the Philippines around the avian flu. In the Philippines, our talent is so important. So they made me write the article for Philippine News. It was my first internship while I was still at UC Santa Cruz before I transferred to UC Berkeley. And they made me mail it to Dado. I don't know if Dado ever got it, but they said, you need to go ask and lobby all of these, very intelligent and also wealthy investors and technologists to let them know. I know Dado, everyone hits him up for money. Honestly, Dado is not the only person in our community that has money that is doing stuff, but he does so much for our community. I just want to let you know how much I love you and how much you do that. So for me, that was what I was raised on, like all of us talk about family and community. So when people talk about Faster Story, I often talk about working for Congressman Ro Khanna, and I connect obviously, and I don't want to be partisan. I worked for Filipinos for Obama. I was a volunteer in 2008, and my mentors were Dexter Gordon, which my cousin invested in, their company, Caliber, which is the first Y Combinator-backed company. And in the rooms that I was in working for Ro, these are, a lot of the people who are like Dado that are high net worth individuals. not as many people were Filipino. It was maybe only Dado and Tita Jocelyn Ding, who was at Google at the time, that could donate at that capacity level that you often have to donate for presidential campaigns. And we took money from all parties, all walks of life. But if we look at the district that I was in between Fremont to San Jose, for people who don't know where that is, so from Apple and Cupertino to Tesla, Filipinos here are actually a part of the first Asian American Pacific Islander majority district outside of Hawaii. So our voter base is very large, yet what's not reflected in dollars or it's say in positions like the one that Anne is in as a director at Netflix, senior vice presidents, angel investors, venture capitalists, founders, our numbers are too low. So when I founded Faster, I actually reached out to Earl Martin Valencia, who was at the time when I had met him, I had his business card from a PhilDev conference like years before he was leading Filipinos at Cisco. I had no idea he was at Stanford. I had no idea he would introduce me to Christina Laskowski, who took Dado's original R&D group Stack to help build a lot of the angel capital in the Philippines. And when I said I haven't been back to Philippines for 20 years, I said I didn't really want to organize Filipino Americans here to help students. It was focused on education. Now we have professional development components. And like I said, I've been in meetings with a lot of different coalitions and all the entrepreneurs right now for our entrepreneur component, we're trying to get them into Y Combinator and Techstars. They are so hardworking. I'm like, you should be exiting a company and trying to IPO, but they're so passionate trying to make sure even our social groups on Clubhouse, which is another social media based app, is trying to make sure that everyone is applying and getting into these programs so they can be the next unicorns and the next, Dado Bonataos and Bobby Murphy. So I know that was a lot in my intro of what inspires me, but it's family, it's all of you, and I just want more beautiful, brown Filipino faces in the rooms that I'm in.
Thank you.
Infrastructure and system.
Thank you so much. No, honestly, you have really made an impact in our community by having Faster and being a voice. Honestly, can I just tell you personally, I think you are the best cheerleader in the entire world. Like, you have the memory of like, I don't know. What's the of an elephant? There you go. Yeah. And like, things that happened like 10, 20 years ago. And I'm like, I don't even remember what I was wearing that day. But
I like to think of Professor Don Mabala and our history. We need to put Dado in a book.
Yeah,
I want him on Netflix. I want everyone here on Netflix. Like,
on Netflix.
Let me be talking to you, Anne. The next one that I'm building.
I'll be the moderator on Netflix. Okay. Just kidding. Well, at the interest of time, thank you very much. I am very grateful for your whole synopsis of our whole community in like one boom. But it was like the Thanos snap. You just said it all in one. I was like, whoa. But with that being said, we definitely want to keep the conversation going and actually speak to your inspiration and the one who helps so many different organizations and community leaders all throughout California, Philippines, everything. We are so very blessed to have with us today the founders of PhilDev. Mr. and Mrs. Dado and Maria Banatao are not only visionaries in technology and entrepreneurship, but they are also delved in philanthropy and community involvement. Dado invented two of the foundation technologies still in every PC: the PC chipset and the graphics acceleration architecture. He served as the managing partner and founder of Tallwood Venture Capital, a venture firm focused on semiconductor technology solutions for computing, communication, and consumer platforms. Dado and Maria also established the Banatao Family Filipino American Education Fund and the Globe Center for Global Learning and Outreach from Berkeley Engineering. They have received awards from UC Berkeley as founding members of Citrus. Dado continues to serve on the Center for Information Technology Research in the Interest of Society Advisory Board and the Berkeley Engineering Advisory Board. He is also the founder and chairman of the Philippine Development Foundation. Maria has served in the past on boards of the Lucille Packard Foundation for Children's Health and the University of California Berkeley Foundation. And she is currently a trustee with Philippine Development Foundation and the chancellor for University of California, Berkeley. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. and Mrs. Maria and Dado Banatao. How are you today?
We're good. We're here in Kona, Hawaii, so it's beautiful out there. It's a sunny day, and we're just overlooking the ocean.
Honestly, I'm jelly because it's malamig tayo sa San Francisco. I'm wearing boots, a sweater, and a blanket sa lap ko. It's really, really cold. So we'll be dreaming about the island vibes as we have this conversation. So I wanted to ask you, Mrs. Maria, is having heard about the success stories and journeys of our Fil-Am women here in Silicon Valley, we would love to know what you think are some of the factors that paved the way for your success in the tech industry or your advocacy.
Well, personally, I have not been employed in a tech company, but of course, having Dado for my husband, I've been exposed to a lot of it. And during the time in my career, I worked for Foothill De Anza Community College and developed a lot of programs to help those who were unemployed or who were on welfare to be employable. So I made an impact in that sense that I was able to create programs for the community college during that time that became, that made people employable. And for me, it was a big accomplishment to find people who are in need and be able to help them. It's really exciting to see all these women of color who are Filipino or part Filipino who have had a lot of success. Of course, Catherine has been a co-trustee at FieldDev and has led FieldDev for 3 years initially our roots really was from Ayala Foundation USA and we became FieldDev. It was Dado's thoughts that just passing money in the Philippines or transferring money in the Philippines will not really make an impact for the country. And he felt that we need to be able to transfer technology and develop more entrepreneurs and be more innovative and in the research and work that they do there. And that's how FieldDev was born. So our 3 pillars is education, which through scholarships, and we do have innovation. So we work very closely with the universities and entrepreneurship. Of course, we've had at least 3 or 4 years where we worked with USAID in doing entrepreneurship workshops based on Dado's experience. And when he was as a managing partner for Tollwood, he felt that he needed to have something to teach all his startup CEOs. So they developed these 5 success factors. So based on those 5 success factors, we did those training programs in the Philippines, which for me really have made a big impact, especially in the universities, because now they do teach entrepreneurship. We help them develop a curriculum, and now it's being implemented in all the universities in the Philippines. And currently there are 10 technology hubs in different regions in the Philippines that then teach or help the other universities within the region. So it's an amazing journey for FieldDev. We feel that in the 10 years that we've been doing this, that we've had quite a bit of success. So we're really happy to continue on, hopefully.
Thank you so much for sharing your input and as well as giving more information about FieldDev. I 100% believe that all the viewers that we have on this conversation are going to be thoroughly inspired to want to be able to join FieldDev and also see how they can contribute as well. Well, I also would love an opportunity to get Dado's take. You have made a big impact in our community as well, obviously, with giving an opportunity within tech and also what you have impacted with your inventions. But I am kind of curious to know, what is your take on gender equality in the tech sector? Do you believe that gender equality is prevalent, Or do you think that there is still stumbling blocks that could be associated within this gender equality in the field?
Yeah, it has improved in the last 20 years that I've been in Silicon Valley. In the beginning, where there were uh, female engineers and so on, they had to kind of step aside a little bit in terms of, again, from the male, simply because of experience. I mean, the female engineers are very bright. They're just so, they work hard. I would say better than the male. And I've seen that. I mean, I've been in many companies. I've started my own companies, and it's very observable that they are very, how do you say that? They work hard. It's simply because I think there is that innate idea that, yeah, there's a little bit of behind the male a little bit, but they work hard. And so the success are there. Of course, male always have some sort of leadership kind of ambition first. Although these days, there's a lot of female engineers that are leading and managing very well. And so, I'm not working as what I did years ago as a beginning engineer in Silicon Valley. I'm more of now observing the companies that I am involved in. I unfortunately I have to be chairman of some of these companies, and I do observe that whether you're an engineer from the Philippines, from the US, of course, and other countries, there's a lot of equality right now. I think that being in Silicon Valley is the influence of similar, I would say, ambition, male, female, from one country to the other. And that's why the Valley is still very, very, very nice place to be in.
The opportunities are there.
Yeah.
I love that. I definitely agree that Silicon Valley, the Bay Area in itself, is a entirely different hybrid in comparison to the rest of the world. Women are empowered to not look at the color of their skin or look at the gender, because there is so much recognition of equality that it's only when they step out of the Bay Area that it's kind of like, wait, there's not a lot of us here. So I agree 100% that Silicon Valley really does foster a lot more opportunity for women and women of color, our BIPOCs, to be able to share the platform and not look at if it's a man, a woman, an Asian, a Black, Latino, or white. They're all considered the same and on the same level playing field. Mind you, there are microaggressions within that, but I think there's a more opportunity for of keeping a level playing field in that aspect. With that being said, I do have a question: is what do you think can be done to foster women to be have more inclusion in the sector outside of Silicon Valley? What do you think are some of the factors that can help contribute to greater success without having to be have the starting point here to be able to have it internationally and globally?
I think at least from the work what we've been doing in Silicon Valley or in the Bay Area, you could see that we have a lot of, for Filipino women, there's a lot of really strong Filipino women who are in various groups. I mean, we work very closely with Google, the Googlers Network, and we have at least 4 Googlers in our board now. Our young trustees are from Google, and I could see that they can really inspire a lot of our young people, a lot of our young women. And Dara and I have the Banatao Family Scholarship that we run through Asian Pacific Fund, and every year we get to invite successful Filipinos who not necessarily be in tech, but in various fields, and present their experience to these young kids who are in STEM programs. And it's amazing the impact on those kids, seeing role models, not necessarily always the Dado Banata. I mean, Dado is, a great example and has done a lot, but there's a lot more young people out there that we need to bring out and showcase to our young people. And I think, hopefully it would pass on beyond California. And what we're now trying to do at Fil-Am is find different people who have a really strong desire to help more nationwide, internationally, and also in the Philippines. How can we bring that collaboration together to really make a bigger impact outside of our current community?
Thank you so much, Maria. Actually, I did have a question for all of our viewers. How would one be able to join FilDev, and what are the parameters or requirements to be part of such an amazing organization?
There's really no requirement. It is just an interest and a passion for it. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we haven't really had any big event, which we normally have a huge fundraising event every year. But now we're trying to, with our young trustees, we're trying to develop like webinars, like on entrepreneurship or whatever is needed by the community. So that's something in the works. And hopefully we will publicize that when it's available. And hopefully people can join in. And there's a ton of things that you can do, not only for our community here, but also for the Philippines, of course. Currently, we're working with Intel, the Intel Filipino group, and they're doing a mentoring program with our scholars in the Philippines. So things like that, there's so many things that are available. And so it's just a matter of, linking up and signing up for things that will be happening soon. But we have fildev.org. And so you can read up there and, make comments or whatever you might be interested in, or any ideas that you might have.
Thank you so much, Mr. and Mrs. Banata. We are so glad that we were able to hear your perspective and be able to hear from your words the impact that, honestly, all the women here can agree has made a really significant impact in where they are today. All right. Are y'all ready? This is the fun part. This is where I can grill all of you, and it's a free for all answering. No, I'm totally kidding. No, we're not going to do that. But we definitely would love to get all of your perspectives on these amazing questions that we have contrived for this presentation. So, as a woman of color, how do you feel with this time right now, with all the anti-hate that has been inflicted on Asians and Asian Americans and our AAPI community? How do you feel as a woman of color?
It's just sad and exhausting. It's just part of the whole year of one thing after another. And it's almost this week, it was almost like, I just don't want to think about it. If I want to be completely honest, right? And in some way, it's not surprising, right? It's we talked about gender inequality and microaggressions, but it's just one more example, a manifestation of just how much inequality there's social injustices there are in the U.S. Like, even though this was considered as like the land of the free for many people, for many immigrants, the reality is it's really not that perfect. And so I think that's just how I felt this last week, just exhaustion and sadness, but also like, yeah, that's how it is. Yeah. That's how it's been.
I will say one thing, even though I echoed Anne at the same time about exhaustion. There's so much movement right now. I think it's why I was late to this meeting, like back to back calls of just Pinay women, Asian Americans. Everyone's asking me, I need to organize a rally, but I haven't done it before. And I'm like, oh, here, all of these organizations, I grouped them into 3 buckets. We finally, with Salesforce, broke it down. Like, they're all not talking to each other, different ages, different demographics, but the thing is, what you can do is capture that energy and movement. It is a tragedy of what happened, but harness that power, whether it's social media. A lot of you, and you have Asana, right? Productivity. It's like, man, I gotta like product manage everyone on my calendar across all the faster groups. And then I was gonna actually schedule and reach out to Phil Dev, like, what can we do, right? Because if we think about, not just Chinese Americans and the 1875 Page Law, which excluded Chinese women, the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act, it's like, well, no, Filipinos have been here since Louisiana and the Acapulco trade. So since like the 1400s, yet the perpetual foreigner syndrome, like, you guys are taking our jobs or whatever, or to think that the fact that the man that shot, all of these, poor Asian women working at a spa just tells me like our women are, seen as like commodified, like as objects, and I think oftentimes the last thing I'll say is, I'm trying to launch like my Twitch stream and Kumu, which I know Dado and many others have invested. I think they're an amazing app, but the moment I come on, sometimes I get hit on. Just to be honest, like in the workplace, there are these things where instead of talking to me about my book and virtual reality, I get asked on dates or whatever. Like, and I know that all of us as women, like in our positions, for someone like Anne to be in a director of engineering position, like there are things that you'll face as a woman or as a guy that you won't see, for other people. So it's different for us. It is a struggle, but despite those struggles, I was noting this the other day, FEAR, we're in fear. Like our people are getting stabbed on the subway in New York. And in San Jose, there was an essential worker who was Pinay that was like 26 years old, that got attacked. It's very scary right now. But I want to take that fear and think all of the women that are here, all you Pinays, were fierce, FIERCE. I'm trying to think of spelling bee memories right now. So, we got to be unafraid and stand our ground and really unite as a community, even if we're tired. I'm really, really exhausted, but I'm going to keep going because I see Dado and Maria, they've been doing this a long time. So I'm just getting started.
I agree with you, Erin. I feel that for the last year and a half, we've had to keep overcoming these hurdles of fear, stress, anxiety, acceptance. And it's gotten to the point where people are just crying out of release because what else can you do? But I don't want us to live in fear. We have to realize that this is a time of action and no longer accepting and creating action plans to be able to drive more women to realize that they are not to be sexualized, demoralized, and victimized, because we are strong, we are powerful, and we are not going anywhere. We actually are the majority in terms of gender. There's 51% of women in the world. It's not even men that run it. So we can say who runs the world? Girls, yes. And I will say that I'm just laughing with this, but in all honesty, we have to realize that the world is an ugly, cruel place, but because women make it amazing and especially women of color, we take what is ugly and nasty and we make something amazing and beautiful and usable and reliable. We create the foundation. So we have to remember that as Pinays, we are the rocks that make the world run. So if that makes sense. But Catherine, Alex, do you have any comments in regard to that? Like, how do you feel?
I would just add just one more lens on the topic, because I'm in violent agreement with everyone, and I feel deeply, deeply saddened from the last couple of weeks. One thing though, and I might just be older than everybody else here, if Freddie's around 30 years ago, when I was at Stanford, there were only 3 Filipinos at Stanford, right? We knew each other. We were like family. My point is, like, in as much as the news is very sad, 30 years ago, it never would have been in the news. Like, it could have happened. So the one tiny little positive out of this is that at least we have a voice now. Like, actually, so I'm watching some of this media coverage and I go, this is incredible. Like, I just saw footage of, I'm so glad people care. I am so glad that we're now elevated, because a lot of other minority groups have been elevated for years, and rightly so. But where are the Filipinos? Where's Southeast Asia, right? So just one more lens on that topic is I am actually glad that there's an elevation in the visibility for what's going on, because 30 years ago, it would not have been there.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you on that. Maria, Dado, Alex, do you have anything to add to that?
It's like Cass was saying, and everyone is saying, it's really scary and sad, and it saddens you that these things are happening even in 2021. And knowing how much Asian Americans have contributed to the Valley and to the world, really, that people still has that you know, I mean, but whatever it is, that they don't feel like we are important and we've done something for the world. And it's sad that that's still happening. But I agree with Catherine that it's great that it's very visible now. And in fact, Asian Pacific Fund has established a fund to help fight this, the violence against Asians. So, you know, I'm hoping that we can all work together, and hopefully, like Erin was saying, we need to talk to one another and be more collaborative in our efforts.
Thank you, Maria. All right. In the interest of time, I would love to ask, because I have a few more questions. What, at any point in your career, have you had feelings associated with imposter syndrome, especially as a woman of color? I told you I would challenge you all. I'm not going to sit here and make it simple.
It's good.
I think for me, it's something that comes up very, very recently. When COVID-19 first happened in 2020 and was declared a pandemic, Google Maps had no idea how to deal with the massive closures, reopenings, anything of that nature. So here they were. My management knew my reputation as being someone who is very delivery driven, who, you know, really digs into the details, has that care about community thoughtfulness when I take action. And they went, hey, Alex, we have no idea how we're going to globally manage opening and closing our 300 million points of interest on Google Maps. Can you figure it out? Oh, by the way, not just figure out how we're going to make the changes, but also how to scale it, because we're not going to give you a big team of people. No, we're not going to throw the 200 operations teams that you normally have. We'll give you volunteers. And let's see, like, you know, we need this done ASAP. This is a P0. For those not in tech, that means very, very like fire drill important. Have at it. And again, I'm kind of like taken aback, like, oh, this is great, really good growth opportunity. And then I was like, oh my God, what did I just say yes to? Because for context for everyone, there was no single authoritative source where you could go to say all of the grocery stores in this country are closed or open, or the hours for this location are only going to be 8 to 9, only for seniors. There was no authoritative source.
Wow.
People weren't moving around, so we couldn't even use our, yes, Google tracks people, with your permission, of course. Couldn't even use our data to kind of, couldn't even use our data to track and tell what was open versus what was closed based on people going. So they gave me this huge task. I start kind of building it out, curmudgeoning around, trying to figure out, okay, what kinds of tools do we have? Lo and behold, we have hundreds of tools that are available. Okay, how can I sort volunteers? And as I'm going through all of this, there was a point where we had a couple of engineers who were questioning the approach that I was taking. Mind you, no one at Google Maps in the entire history had ever had to deal with this problem. And these engineers who happened to be white males were really questioning me hard. Like, why did you pick to do this? Oh, look at the technical inefficiencies. Oh, look at this. And I'm sitting here kind of taken aback. Like, you know, when I needed your brain power and your help, because again, the initial response was built off of volunteers, you were nowhere to be found. And now Fast forward to, I have something, it's not working the greatest, but mind you, in 3 months time, I processed 140% more changes than we did in the entire year last year. Again, for scope. So I had these engineers coming at me and I was kind of like, what position do I take? Do I play my, typical Asian, like, oh, sorry, sir, like kind of stereotype role? Or do I stand up? Like, do they have the right to speak to me this way or question me in this aggressive, non-productive manner, right? And it was tough. And I was lucky enough to have a Filipino director remind me. She was like, no, you built this from nothing. Like, I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if they have a PhD in physics. Like, I don't care if they've driven a car to the moon. Don't care. You're the expert. You were the one to be here. You were the one to figure it out. You use your skill set to get here. So don't let them push you around and make you feel less than, or make you feel like your approach was wrong, right? You're doing the best that you can do. So for me, the COVID-19, on top of everything else, personally being locked in my house and stuff like that, it really brought out some of those imposter syndrome. Like, the imposter syndrome for me really stood out as I was navigating Google Maps' response to how to deal with these massive closures.
I will say thank you for making it easy for us to find grocery stores, because my parents went gaga looking for toilet paper. I think everybody else was too. So thank you for that. Your imposter.
That's real. That's real. Toilet paper is a real problem.
Anyone else on the panel would like to chime in as to how imposter syndrome has affected you in your career?
Just following up to what Alex said, I mean, there's a Harvard Business Review article that just came out this month. I don't know if people saw it. It said, like, let's stop telling women they have imposter syndrome. And I think part of it is, like, in relation to what Alex said, it's actually because you're putting the blame of imposter syndrome on the women to feel that, right? Or it's like, oh, it's your feeling, right? But in fact, it's not the feeling of women, but it's how other people treat them that may cause them to feel imposter syndrome. So if, like, we change the narrative to what is making women feel this way or not as confident as they should be, like, let's shift the narrative there instead of saying, like, do you feel imposter syndrome?
Oh my gosh, I love that. Honestly, I didn't know it was imposter syndrome until a manager divulged it. And I was like, so do I have imposter syndrome? And am I supposed to be mad about it? And I think by implanting that psyche into someone's head, they think that they're entitled to feel imposter syndrome. And I totally agree with that statement. Stop thinking you're the imposter. Everybody else is the imposter. You're the queen. You know what you're talking about. So I'm so glad you mentioned that, Erin. So with that being said, we're going to pivot to the question of what we feel about our youth. Are you ready? I know it's kind of weird. These Gen Zers. No, I'm just kidding. I would love to hear, what do you fear for our future Fil-Ams or Pinays of the future? And what do you think should be done to prevent them from making the errors of our past? I know, intense.
I actually feel, well, it's not a perfect world, but they've got a pretty good, if my kids are an example, they've got a pretty damn good setup. I've got two daughters. They're teenagers. Well, actually, one's 21 now. And the younger one actually goes to an all-girls high school in Palo Alto, Castellea. And boy, there's no imposter syndrome there. In fact, there may be too much confidence going on there. I say that jokingly. I'm glad that they come forth with a lot of confidence. They're lucky to be growing up I know it's a little bit of a contradiction, a double-edged sword. They're lucky to be growing up in a place where there is high growth, high technology, much opportunity, people who don't look at you and think, oh, woman, should I second guess her opinion? Like in many of these new companies that I've worked with, literally, I've noticed this distinct difference from like the 80s and 90s to today. There is like authentic gender neutrality in many, not every, but in many companies that are, especially the startups right now. They're just better educated, the universe. But I do fear that the kids, and I lecture them all the time, they may not realize how much opportunity that they have. So I've got my teenage, great example in one sentence, right? She says to me on Saturday, oh, like, Mom, I need the car keys because Bella and I are going to do lunch. We're going to work on our coding project for our entrepreneurship class. We're so busy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, let me just contrast this to when I was her age, right? Like we didn't do brunch. My mom would bring the rice cooker with us and we would eat outside. That was my doing brunch when I was 15, right? There was no like going to the cafe to get a latte, right? And then work was not school. Work for us was like supporting my dad and painting the walls at the apartment building where he was like a superintendent for his part-time job. And homework was what you did after you did your family chores. So I know they're very stressed because they're really pushed academically and pushed towards whatever expectations they perceive of being. But I fear that they may have lost perspective on how much opportunity they really have. And I think I don't have a perfect answer. Maybe another mother has an answer, but I do lecture them all the time and tell them how different it was for us growing up. And they've got to remember their Filipino roots and remember bayanihan and helping each other and everything that brings us together on this call and in this meeting and brings us together as Filipinas. That's what I hope for our kids.
I'm so grateful that you said that because I think being a parent in this day and age is both a blessing and a curse. And I think everyone can agree with it because they have so much opportunity at their fingertips, but they don't know what to do with it. And I think it's so vital that we have organizations like FilDev, we have Faster, we have all these ERGs at Google, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Salesforce to be able to pivot the fact that you have the world at your feet. It's a matter if you want to take the step to open that opportunity for yourself. So I totally agree with that. Anyone else have a feedback on that question?
For myself, I feel like there are still a lot of Filipino families in a lower income bracket that we need to reach out to, because those are the kids who probably don't really have the knowledge that they do have those opportunities that they can take advantage of. So that outreach, I think, still has to happen. It has to happen more aggressively. And because I've seen, like we work with University of California, Merced, and I met their Filipino, Dario and I met with their Filipino group. And, these kids were mostly from families in, that part of the country where there's basically agriculture. And they were really hungry for role models, to listen to people who have been successful in Silicon Valley and really get to know those opportunities. So I think that group in our community, we need to reach out to, because those kids probably don't really know what to do or what opportunities there are. And I've seen that with our scholars in the Banato Foundation, the Banato Scholarship that we have. They come to us really hungry for knowledge, in the 4 years that they're with us, they're so changed that it's really that they cry at the end of 4 years that they're having to leave because they've been exposed to all these people who have become role models for them. So I think definitely we need to reach out to those young kids.
Yeah, we visited that school, and I asked one professor, what do you guys, because they I think there were Filipino students when we were there,
Yeah,
right?
that's a Filipino.
And I asked, could you give me a comment on the Filipino students? Well, they're kind of shy. They come from farmers in Sacramento area.
Yeah, Sacramento.
Things like that. I mean, it does impede on their effort. I mean, the mind, I guess, has something to do with, well, not timid, but
Just shy.
it's just shy.
Mm.
They're just shy.
Yeah.
And we were there again the next year. It was still the same.
So more outreach.
Yeah. So we need to get that organized there.
Thank you so much for all of you wonderful, amazing people. I'm so blessed for us to be part of this panel and hearing your perspectives and sharing so much of your story, her story, in this panel with the consulate. So we have 2 more questions, and we're going to make it a really quick round on this one. It's a fun one, so I hope you're ready. What is the theme song of your career?
Mine will be Us by Ruby Ibarra. I'm privileged to be into her music videos. And the quote I'll have is, it's about the Filipino privileges, right? Like, oh, we're not privileged because X, Y, and Z, but you do have one benefit and privilege, and that's being born Filipina. So that's from Faith Centinela. You can look up the lyrics online, so I don't take up too much time. But that's my favorite. All of the Circa 91 album is great, so you should all listen to it.
Awesome. Thank you. Alex, what is your theme song of your career?
I'm going to go with Queen Bey, Beyonce.
Hey.
All day, I think of Upgrade You, because whoever is with me, whether they be my husband or my friends, like, get up, let's go. And that is what I keep thinking to myself. Let me get up on another level, and whoever's with me, I will upgrade you.
Oh, I love it. What about you, Anne?
Okay, so it's not my whole career, but maybe my career at Netflix. And this is embarrassing to say, but it's really, do you want to build a snowman? And it's because my career at Netflix was kind of merged with my being a mom. And so that was just really the soundtrack of my working at Netflix, is just hearing Frozen over and over and over again.
You're my favorite right now. No offense to all the other ones, but I'm a huge Disney fan. And so I always randomly walk up to the doors of my kids and I'm like, do you want to build a snowman? Come on, let's go and play. And they're like, shh, I'm in class. I'm in class. Why?
I mean,
I'm the goofy mom, but I'm also the one that's checking on them every 5 minutes. Like, are you in class? Are you in class? Did you turn in your assignment? What about you, Catherine?
Boy, this is an interesting one. So I think I have to go to Sister Sledge for an oldie, and the song "We Are Family," because, and I'm thinking back to Alex's presentation, because whenever I've gone to an interview or I'm pitching a pitch, I always say that what value I bring as a Filipina is the spirit of the Bayanihan. And so it's all about family, and I bring it into every company, every job, every partnership that I work on. So we are family.
I love it. Maria Dado, what would you say is your theme song?
I don't know. We're not really that much into theme songs. I mean, even for us, when we were just going out, people like, oh, so what's your theme song? We don't have a theme song. What is there?
yeah, mine is everything that James Taylor sings.
I like that. I'm okay with that. I like that. I love James Taylor. It's okay. So you're gonna laugh. I'm actually gonna piggyback on Anne on my theme song, because I always believe that love can conquer everything. So love is an open door. Or Or I'm a survivor because I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to work harder. So I got to say, those are my two theme songs. And I hope that transpires how quirky I am. I apologize in all levels. I would have also picked Ikaw or Nandito Ako from by Leia Solanka because at the end of the day, we're all here for each other and we need to hold each other tight and say, I love you, I value you, and I will always be here for you. Okay, I'm cheesy now. That's hella like OPM right there. Anyway, with that being said, I have one last question for all of you wonderful guests for our panel today. What are your hopes for our Filipino and Filipino American girls and young women?
I hope someday that my daughter can run faster and work with PhilDev and can dream of being like a founder of something like a Kumu or a Snapchat like a Bobby Murphy. And I know we have Sheila Marcelo, who founded care.com. We have Jennifer Tejada, right, of PagerDuty, but we can be starting them from like day one in the womb, be like, me watching some machine learning videos while I'm pregnant. Not yet, not right now, but like, that's what I dream about. And I just think generations on, like, if you think about Dado's story, and so, I mean, someone actually framed this for me in a clubhouse room. They said, what would the world look like if a Filipino did not exist? We wouldn't have experiences in virtual reality. A Filipino made that, Dino Ignacio. We wouldn't have the chips in anything that's functioning without Dado. We wouldn't have Snapchat. We wouldn't be singing karaoke on Kumu. We wouldn't have some of the most beautiful technology world, and Netflix would be buffering if not for Anne, right? So that's what I dream about, where, you know, generations after me, I would like to think maybe this little line of code from, I don't know, my nieces that I gave Google Cardboard, they're going to be making fun of me. Oh, you know, Lola, Grand Lola, Aaron created whatever an augmented virtual reality, and it's a hologram talking to them. That's what I think about.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm hoping in technology, that we will be able to say Back to the Future and making that dehydrated pizza into a big hydrated pizza. And our kids are like, it's nothing, but we did that. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Alex, what is your hope?
I really hope that kind of two things. One, that we don't have to give young Filipino and Filipino Americans permission to put their oxygen mask on first and take care of themselves first before taking care of everyone else. I think that is, for me, a really big thing that, you know, society, both within Filipino culture sometimes, as well as American society, puts on women. And I really hope that they don't have to navigate that or feel any guilt towards taking care of themselves, self-love, self-care. The second thing is that I hope to see, you know, I'm a huge Leia Salonga fan. I literally cried when we had a session with her at Google, like ugly cry, my fake eyelashes fell out cry. So I'm hoping that we have, you know, a Filipino Beyonce. I know we got close with Charisse.
We got her.
We have some hip hop coming up. We got some artists. They're coming.
But really finding that they have that strong, beautiful, multidimensional woman with a voice who's not afraid to speak, that they have someone, not saying that the ones that are there right now aren't powerful. Like y'all said, they are there, but just really having that icon to look up to, and that more women, not just Filipino Americans, look up to, right? Like really somebody for every woman, because, you know, as Catherine mentioned, that bayanihan, that cultural aspect of being Filipino, that we bring everyone together, like that's the embodiment for me. And that's my hope that, you know, young women, Filipino women get to see.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Alex. And what would you say your hope is?
Yeah, you know, concretely, I hope that less Filipino women would have to struggle with the choice of leaving their families back home for, you know, a better life somewhere else. And, you know, I've seen that a lot with my own family, with, you know, we had a yaya, her sisters, and it really, you know, breaks my heart. And so a part of it, related to that is just Filipino girls will just be maybe as lucky as me. I feel I've been lucky, I've been fortunate, I've been privileged that more Filipino women will be as privileged as me. And it's not just for them. I think, I see how I'm not the smartest, I'm not the most hardworking Filipino out there. I know that. And there's just so much we can offer, the empathy, the resourcefulness, the intellect that we can offer to the world. And I think there's just that lack of opportunities. So I don't know, it's a big problem, but I just hope that, more women can be maybe as lucky as I've been.
We are all very lucky. I just have to say that we're very blessed. Every single day, I feel like I have to pinch myself to remind how lucky we truly are to be able to work in a company in our companies that allows us to be who we are, to share our intelligence, our wit, our impact on so many different levels. So thank you, Anne. Catherine, what is your hope?
It's just, I was really resonating with Anne on her comment. And especially the point about, Filipinos are just inherently helpful. We have a value at Asana. We call it, we don't espouse false trade-offs. And so there are many hopes I have for young Filipino women, but one of them is that we keep our sense of helpfulness, goodness in the heart, the connection of our heart to our head, and not see that as a trade-off for taking ownership and driving outcomes and taking on more responsibility and driving the bus instead of being a passenger. I don't think that if you're super helpful and caring, you have to trade off leading. And I hope that they can take both of those things forward and also just not wait for luck or something to come your way. Like go take it, get educated, take responsibility, own something, drive outcomes, build value, and bring your Filipino values along with you. It's not a trade-off.
I love that. You don't have to lose yourself to be successful. You have to know your roots, right? Know your roots and it's kind of like life is like a tree. The roots hold you firmly. The trunk is what you've decided to reach for. And the branches can go as far as you want with the knowledge as the leaves that go to the wind to inspire other people. You can take that from me. I just made that up today. Maria and Dado. Pardon?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I said that's like my logo design of my startup. It was like a forget me not, and then I was like, maybe it's like a tree because of the roots. So I'm like on the same wavelength as you.
There we go. Dado, Maria, do you have any hope? What is your hope?
I'm thinking, looking back, Dado and I are probably we are the oldest in this group right now. We're in our 70s. We've been here since the 60s, and we've seen a big difference as to the current situation versus the years past. And I'm hoping that we continue to grow. We continue to have more role models like we have today. And I think that will happen. It's a matter of us helping those young Filipino women, rise up. We have to share our experiences with them and give them that knowledge that we've learned through the years of how they can be successful. So I'm very hopeful because I've seen a big difference from 1968 when I first arrived to 2021. So definitely it's things will happen for us.
Thank you, everyone. If I were to leave one word of hope that I hope for ours is empowerment, that they always feel empowered to challenge anything and everything. And I totally agree with Maria that everything has changed in our world. It's always going to be changing, but the hope that they have so much more to grasp onto, like we said previously, it just gives me the chills to know that my children are going to live in a world that's just absolutely amazing, as long as we change these microaggressions and create the equality that we need. I just had to bring it back there. With that being said, I want to thank you. Thank you so much to our resource speakers, Miss Anne Aaron, Miss Catherine BUAN, Miss Alexandria Chu, Miss Erin Pangalinan, and our special guests, Mr. and Mrs. Maria and Dado Panatao. Special thanks to PhilDev and Jonesy Castro, our PhilDev Executive Director. And of course, nothing would have been possible without this wonderful thank you to the Consul General Neil FERRER and the Philippine Consulate for spearheading this event. I hope that we're able to shed light on the state of women in technology. And most importantly, our hope is that our conversation tonight has inspired our women and girls to be the best they can be and be able to disrupt, so to speak, in tech terms, not only the tech industry, but whatever field that they believe they can contribute to. Thank you again. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat and have a wonderful evening. Good night.